PlayStation owners throughout the PS1 and PS2 eras had no shortage of arcade and simulation racers. From first-party offerings like Gran Turismo and Wipeout, to third-party endeavors such as Formula 1, Ridge Racer, and Burnout, PlayStation players regularly enjoyed their fill of high-octane action. One development house, Evolution Studios, made a name for itself by producing sim racers for the Sony-owned hardware. Evolution's World Rally Championship, or WRC franchise, received 5 PS2 entries, dragging fans into off-road excursions with impressive physics and audio designed to reflect the exhilaration of the life-threatening car sport. Evolution pumped the brakes when transitioning to PS3 development, foregoing its simulation roots in favor of the arcade-driven MotorStorm. Often likened to the carnage of Burnout, MotorStorm set a new bar for off-roading by throwing away the rulebook that many racing games had long followed. The pursuit of these ends resulted in a racer that pit vehicles of disparate types against each other, with dirt bikes fighting for control of the road versus big rigs. Evolution made sure every vehicle controlled differently, and every lap around a track offered new challenges, a feat it accomplished across multiple games. But not unlike WRC before it, MotorStorm drifted to the background when a new generation of hardware skidded onto the scene. Instead of bringing the popular PS3 series to PS4, the developers hedged their bets on Drive Club, the immersive racer where teaming up with others took precedent. Drive Club's unfortunate failure marked Evolution's last turn at the wheel and spelled doom for the future of the beloved MotorStorm IP. This is the rise and fall of MotorStorm. This video was made possible by you. Over the course of the last couple of months, the support we've received from you in patronage and donations has been nothing but heartwarming. Your generosity is the foundation of what enables us to continue creating videos. But that's not all. Thanks to you, we are now slowly able to return to a steady output in content. Even more exciting, we have some exclusive projects in the pipeline that we can't wait to share with you. So if you want to be the first to get a glimpse of what we're working on and help us, a small independent team of 4 creatives, keep our channel alive, please consider supporting us on Patreon. You'll receive early access to our latest videos and enjoy a wealth of exclusive content and rewards, not available on YouTube. Thanks for all your support, and we hope you'll enjoy this video. Evolution Studios' expertise with vehicle sims predated its WRC days. Co-founder Martin Kenwright helped establish digital image design in 1989, planting the seeds that led the outfit to produce several combat, flight, and space combat simulators. Following a corporate buyout, Kenwright and other developers exited digital image design, then partnered with Ian Hetherington of Psygnosis fame to open another vehicle-centric studio in England, thus opening Evolution's doors in 1999. Shortly after signing a publishing deal with Sony Computer Entertainment Europe, the UK-based crew set to work on WRC, releasing the rally driving game on PlayStation 2 in November 2001. 4 increasingly ambitious iterations followed the first installment, each one launched annually between 2002 and 2005. During that period, Evolution pursued yet another goal in the genre, developing an off-road racing experience that emphasized chaotic environments. According to technical director Scott Kirkland's GDC 2007 presentation, production on what would become MotorStorm began in the latter part of 2004 as a result of this thinking and the advent of next-generation hardware. Getting the green light to move forward with such a project came with its challenges. After all, Evolution had been pigeonholed as an institution chiefly suited for rally racing. It took time, but higher-ups within the studio finally convinced Sony executives that a new IP could both surprise audiences and showcase the power of the next-gen PlayStation platform. Fortunately for all involved, Sony encouraged the WRC crew to shoot for the stars. Injecting chaos into a usually rigid genre constituted the primary conceit behind MotorStorm. Ken Wright noted in a GameSpot Q&A that WRC provided a great basis for the new endeavor, yet removing the shackles of sim racing inspired relief. The key centered on throwing the rulebooks away, so whatever players thought they could never do on a track suddenly morphed into possibility. From the outset, then, developers built MotorStorm as a global brand with mass appeal in mind. Reaching these heights required fantastic moment-to-moment action alongside spectacle and awe-inspiring visuals. Audiences glimpsed Evolution's grandiose vision when Sony unveiled the off-road racer during its infamous E3 2005 press conference. Unbeknownst to the public at the time, PlayStation's E3 2005 showcase would long be remembered for questionable PS3 game reveals. The jaw-dropping Killzone 2 trailer stole the show, for example, yet did so under dubious circumstances with an internal vision video that developers later admitted was never meant for external viewing. MotorStorm similarly stunned audiences courtesy of an announcement trailer filled with remarkable visuals, complex physics, and near-impossible feats of action. Viewers at home and press in attendance couldn't determine whether the footage actually represented the final product or a case of touched-up renders. Developer interviews and exposés later corrected the record. In revisiting the PS3 classic, Eurogamer confirmed MotorStorm originally bore the title of Stampede. Its conception born from a desire to celebrate dirt racing with asymmetrical vehicle battles, deep physics systems, huge tracks, and upwards of 48 cars per race. In other words, Evolution's earliest vision for MotorStorm exemplified what it meant to be next-gen. The E3 trailer set expectations far too high, however. Sitting down with One-Up in 2008, lead designer Nigel Kershaw and creative director Paul Hollywood said the unveiling frustrated much of the studio, since no one from Sony would publicly clarify that the video didn't feature in-game footage. Myriad other problems complicated the trailer too, chief among them being the absence of Evolution's direct influence. CGI and VFX specialist Realtime UK crafted the so-called target render before the MotorStorm creators could even access PS3 hardware in-house. Sony had the team producing rudimentary builds on PCs that supposedly matched the console specs. Yet Evolution discovered that PS3 fell short of internal expectations upon receiving the real hardware several months after the E3 announcement. With just 1 year to develop the game, trouble regularly ensued. One example cited by Eurogamer concerned the programming crew having to implement unfamiliar techniques, all while working on unfinished dev kits. Regardless of the behind-the-scenes drama, the developers saved face following the reveal, insisting that players were in for a brutal racing experience, complete with constantly changing landscape conditions and a wide array of vehicles from which to choose. ATVs, dirt bikes, race trucks, sandrails, and rally cars accounted for a few playable options. But the Havoc-powered physics system stole the show once Evolution unleashed gameplay footage. Journalists who saw MotorStorm at GDC 2006 argued that while the visual fidelity wasn't on par with the original E3 demo, carefully applied elements such as mud physics and the accompanying particle effects made all the difference. For instance, the tires from ATVs left deep grooves in the mud while kicking up dirt at trailing vehicles, which then hardened and dried over time. Though the 2005 trailer captured the public's attention with its mesmerizing visuals, developers believed much of the hype also stemmed from intrigue surrounding the targeted gameplay qualities. As such, Evolution placed special emphasis on the beat-to-beat action above all else, such that each one of the vehicle classes controlled differently while boasting independent advantages and disadvantages. Rally cars arguably featured the best handling, but tighter suspension meant players were better served while driving on harder surfaces lest the vehicle bounce around uncontrollably. Terrain deformation most notably came into play in this regard. Because MotorStorm exclusively included off-road landscapes, every vehicle's tires tore up the ground underneath, creating slick and muddy roads that altered the track for each subsequent lap. Smaller vehicles, like bikes, particularly suffered later in the race by succumbing to the slicker earth compared to semi-trucks. The studio's solution for what many may have perceived as an unfair impediment was another of MotorStorm's top selling points: alternate paths that racers could take along any given track. Speaking with IGN, associate producer Kyle Zundel explained that players would find changing paths beneficial based on their vehicle of choice and those they competed against. Bike riders seeking higher ground to steer clear of larger rides served as but one example. Evolution framed the endgame goal beyond the confines of merely reaching the finish line, instead pushing players to collect tickets with each win that unlocked new events. The events themselves existed as part of a festival set in Monument Valley, the real-life desert region along the Arizona-Utah border. Described as Burning Man meets Coachella meets off-road racing, the in-universe MotorStorm Festival represented a hub between races and offered a constant stream of background music. To this end, Evolution aimed to liveify the game by letting users play imported music on the PS3 while simultaneously running MotorStorm, thereby creating a deeper sense of immersion. Recreating the look of Monument Valley proved equally essential, enough that developers hired filmmakers who utilized state-of-the-art camera systems to capture footage of the area from a helicopter. In behind-the-scenes developer commentary, senior simulation engineer Ian Bickerstaff gave 2 reasons for this particular approach. First, citing a need to create a special intro sequence. The footage additionally helped produce fill-in shots for the festival, further proof of the studio's commitment to engaging players in the off-road racer. All of these disparate parts contributed to a balancing act that multiple lead developers called difficult. CEO Martin Kenwright said nervousness about the project exacerbated the tension, especially given the close calls with demos and no-shows. Naturally, several concepts fell by the wayside in the pursuit of high standards, though senior producer Pete Smith argued against going forward with ideas that ran the risk of compromising the project, hence MotorStorm's perceived lack of features. However, Smith insisted the Burning Man-style events shown in the announcement trailer weren't neglected, having instead been intended as a model of where the series could go in the future. Such comments hardly explain the absence of split-screen multiplayer. At the time, the industry by and large started trending away from split-screen fare. Evolution towed a similar line, prioritizing the single-player mode. Various online offerings made the cut, though, with Sony's then-nascent PlayStation Network breathing life into MotorStorm's multiplayer capabilities. For PS3, the hardware manufacturer promised a free service supported by Sony Computer Entertainment's server infrastructure, which launched alongside the console itself. Third-party servers and online commerce a la Xbox Live counted among the most touted features, in addition to video chat and online contact lists. MotorStorm specifically used PS3's network functionality for multiplayer, ladder rankings, challenges, and post-launch DLC. Surprisingly, none of these features were present when MotorStorm hit Japan in late 2006 as a PS3 launch title. According to Kenwright, Japan's incomplete release was fueled by an interest in creating early momentum for the racing game. Its well-received showing during 2006's Tokyo Game Show, plus the observation that multiplayer didn't matter as much to Japanese audiences, influenced the decision as well. Fortunately, MotorStorm launched feature complete for its North American and European debut in March 2007, quickly cementing itself as somewhat of a killer app for the PS3. Post-release updates, DLC, and a complete edition that later included everything on disc further solidified MotorStorm's staying power for the 7th-gen console. Many would argue the true might of the brand only reared its head once the sequel, Pacific Rift, landed in 2008. Lackluster multiplayer functionality mixed with a dearth of content, long loading times, and the absence of a split-screen mode prevented MotorStorm from reaching its fullest potential. Evolution's PS3 debut scored well with reviewers regardless, owing to the fun off-road racing gameplay bolstered by vehicle variety and inventive track designs. In approximately 1 year of release, the racer moved 3 million units worldwide. Success developers partly attributed to MotorStorm's status as a launch title. The critical praise and commercial wins didn't beget complacency, though. On the contrary, the team took player feedback into consideration and subsequently fashioned future development decisions around the critiques and praise. By responding to feedback, Evolution knew how to expand upon an already solid foundation, starting with a brand new setting for the MotorStorm Festival. Monument Valley served the original title well, yet the mostly monotone desert left a lot to be desired. The developers infused the second entry with variation, figuring one locale with a good sense of place would do the trick. The island manifested as a result, its tropical Pacific Ocean influence spawning 4 elemental-themed biomes, every one of them accentuating the tactical edge that certain vehicles gained on specific courses. The Air Zone's tracks were situated high atop a mountain adorned with several big jumps. Races near a volcano's lava pools made up the fire biome. Another playable zone tasked users with completing laps around bodies of water. And finally, the Earth-centric area harkened back to Monument Valley via muddy patches and rough terrain. In total, developers designed 16 multi-route courses for MotorStorm Pacific Rift, twice as many as its predecessor. Real-time terrain deformation, shortcuts, and object destruction, the latter of which spread disruptive debris across the track, ensured no two laps ever felt the same. Creative director Paul Hollywood told Kikizo that despite the drastic change in scenery, the chaotic core of MotorStorm remained untouched, but elevating the experience between games required more than swapping out backdrops. Hollywood argued the plastic quality of past environments forced the vehicles to perform the heavy lifting in terms of inciting in-game chaos. For Pacific Rift, such responsibility fell on the environments themselves. Vehicles underwent quite the overhaul too, evident in tweaks that balanced out the environmental-based adjustments. All classes returned for the sequel, meaning players would once more pit ATVs and motorbikes against buggies and semi-trucks. Interestingly, monster trucks also joined the roster, adding another behemoth to the lineup capable of smashing through smaller rides and the island's thick foliage, though a lack of agility prevented monster trucks from becoming too overpowered. Better handling across all vehicle classes helped bring this detail to fruition, as Hollywood claimed the handling models in Pacific Rift were nothing shy of accurate, so much so that the game almost functioned like a simulation. These modifications went a long way in addressing player feedback, yet developers ignored the consensus that the speed of MotorStorm paled in comparison to Burnout. Evolution believed higher velocities would have unnecessarily heightened the difficulty of controlling vehicles. It's not Burnout. Game director Nigel Kershaw explained in the Kikizo interview, claiming MotorStorm's off-roading and split-second route decisions would have been further complicated at top speeds. Though the general tempo of races received no significant change, the development crew implemented new attack maneuvers that guaranteed the mood between riders could shift at a moment's notice. Throwing punches manifested in the PS3 launch title as context-sensitive actions, contingent on specific situations. Pacific Rift upped the ante with actions mapped to the shoulder buttons on the controller, allowing bike riders to leisurely punch at competitors while drivers in large vehicles activated ram attacks. And because they were overly vulnerable in the original, bikers gained a bunny hop and ducking move for purposes of skirting imminent danger. Heightening offensive abilities for players necessitated an AI rework that awoke better responses from NPCs. Thus, Evolution rewrote MotorStorm's AI system, introducing non-playable drivers who were skilled at racing courses, reacted to context sensitivity, and benefited from less rubber banding. These refinements made way for player-centric AI governed by three distinct goals: entertaining opponents, challenging opponents, and winning the race. The smoke and mirror antics of the 2007 entry were long gone, dethroned by smarter AI capable of provoking users and becoming irritated in turn. Consequently, human racers could antagonize NPC drivers with gesture mechanics like flicking them the bird, thereby drawing AI into crash-inducing situations. All told, these advancements tackled the difficulty complaints leveled against MotorStorm's first installment as the retooled AI begat fairer, yet challenging competitions. The much-coveted addition of 4-player split-screen counted among the most important features introduced in Pacific Rift. Kershaw addressed fan interest in the mode during a discussion with CVG, recalling the number of inquiries the team received about split-screen multiplayer potentially arriving post-launch. The game director said Evolution looked into obliging the requests, only to realize the structure of the racer's codebase wouldn't allow for it. This revelation encouraged a greater time commitment to multiplayer throughout Pacific Rift's production, culminating in robust, user-friendly features. And fortunately, familiarity with PS3's notoriously complex inner workings saw the crew squeeze 50% more performance out of the hardware, improving frame rate, as well as shielding the split-screen mode from hiccups in rendering quality. Of course, other noteworthy tweaks and new additions found their way into the sequel, many of them old ideas that Evolution tabled because of a hasty development cycle geared towards finishing in time for PS3's November 2006 arrival. Advanced object destruction represented one such previously shelved feature that resurfaced in Pacific Rift. Naturally, new ideas cropped up too, resulting in a character select screen replacing the pre-selected rider models assigned to each vehicle in the first installment. A garage also entered the fray, simplifying the once cumbersome vehicle select options, which players loathed in the original because of long loading times. What's more, a streamlined user interface, trophy support, and photo mode were among another batch of features the developers knew demanded their immediate attention based on feedback. In September 2007, mere months after MotorStorm's North American debut, Sony acquired both Evolution and its satellite Big Big Studios. Co-founders Martin Kenwright and Ian Hetherington exited the company, leaving Group Studios director Mick Hawking to manage the two teams as well as Wipeout developer Sony Liverpool. Sony Worldwide Studios VP Michael Denny said in a statement that the purchase made sense given the publisher's highly productive and commercially successful relationship with the development houses. MotorStorm had already become one of PS3's top-selling titles. Evidently, PlayStation executives were confident Evolution would again hit pay dirt, hinting at as much by concurrently confirming production on a new iteration. The sequel reveal included scant details, primarily teasing its 2008 launch window. Early in its marketing cycle, Pacific Rift struggled with substandard hands-on builds beset by low frame rates and crashing issues. Evolution consistently improved upon its demo builds, impressing journalists and would-be players with increasingly compelling gameplay showcases and promises of a locked 30 FPS performance at launch. When it finally arrived in the fall of 2008, the tropical-themed sequel delivered on every promise and then some, expanding on the fun of its predecessor while cutting out lingering imperfections. PS3 faithful purchased the follow-up in droves, helping it cross 1 million copies sold in just 6 weeks. The thrill ride didn't stop there either. Beginning in May 2009, Evolution rolled out free weekly vehicle packs boasting new paint jobs for 3 vehicles with the express intention of giving every bike, car, and truck fresh customization options. Displayable medals known as micro badges similarly went live in a free update designed to let players publicly exhibit their greatest accomplishments. 2 paid expansion packs, Speed and Adrenaline Rush, additionally kept users engaged, introducing new events, vehicles, tracks, and liveries. This level of post-launch support, combined with quality day-one releases, quickly secured MotorStorm a place among the upper echelon of PlayStation-owned racers alongside Gran Turismo and Wipeout. Nintendo's uncontested domination of the handheld gaming market received suitable competition when Sony shipped the PlayStation Portable in 2004. The on-the-go device enjoyed an incredible library of games, a selection of them coming in the form of must-play racing titles. A mobile MotorStorm didn't enter development until late 2007, with Evolution subsidiary and Pursuit Force developer Big Big Studios at the helm. Rumblings about a PSP version of MotorStorm began circulating in November 2008, courtesy of information disclosed to a UK gaming blog by an attendee of Sony Europe's staff annual briefing. The publisher formally unveiled the project, subtitled Arctic Edge, months later at its Destination PlayStation Retailer Conference, telling audiences to expect the portable racer on both PSP and PS2 in fall 2009. Notably, Big Big abandoned Monument Valley's desert landscape and the tropical terrain of the island, believing the MotorStorm Festival on PSP deserved its own unique backdrop. The team chose the icy wastes of Alaska as a setting, wanting to welcome newcomers while simultaneously appeasing the existing fanbase. Big Big left no stone unturned when digitally recreating the real-world locale either, having sent a group of developers on a location scouting trip that yielded thousands of photos and hours of video footage. The immensity of the landscape on top of its mountainous terrain and gorgeous sights inspired the creation of Arctic Edge's 12 tracks, which designers divided into 3 segments around a mountain range. Muddy roads covered the lower-level tracks. Courses higher up the range housed gravelly routes peppered with snow. The final set of tracks wrapped around the mountain's peak, where every path lay caked with thick snow and the risk of avalanches and heavy winter storms seldom let up. Despite centralizing a new location, Arctic Edge developers insisted MotorStorm's signature off-road racing would remain intact. The handling, ragdoll physics, over-the-top crashes, and festival events included. In fact, the team of 30 found fresh ways to incorporate the game's icy surroundings into the franchise's chaotic gameplay style. Senior tester Adrian Haig touted new danger zones in a behind-the-scenes featurette detailing how rock slides could occur if triggered by particular events. The idea was that racers in good competitive standing could tactically cause a rock slide in hopes of dispatching opponents trailing at their backs. Environmental hazards also manifested as breakable ice bridges, which could work for and against heavier vehicles. Bobsleigh corners were similarly designed to keep racers on the edge of their seats and test MotorStorm's deep vehicle handling system. In addition, new obstacles spawned elements that proved advantageous on ice-covered tracks. Snow patches constituted but one example, cooling down a vehicle's turbo boost when activated. These banks of snow formed out of necessity during production, as Big Big realized how often players took drastically different routes through each course. The series' first run at reversible tracks, which allowed players to race courses in both directions, hammered this point home as well. Six vehicle classes from the Evolution games returned for Arctic Edge, namely ATVs, bikes, big rigs, buggies, rally cars, and snowpluggers. For its frigid Alaskan experience, Big Big invited two previously unseen vehicles into the franchise, further differentiating the PSP racer from its PS3 counterparts. The nimbler of the pair, the Snow Machine, handled much like an ATV, trading in traditional tires for tracks and skis that made it the speedier option when traversing long stretches of snow and ice. Speaking to Pocket Gamer, game director Richard Ogden described the second new addition, Snowcats, as more of a rival to the Big Rig. A hulking, fully tracked vehicle, the Snowcat performed well on every surface and easily mowed down many of its adversaries. Under the right circumstances, however, the momentum it built up over time could do more harm than good for anyone controlling it. If nothing else, the intricate handling characteristics of the Snow Machine and Snowcat vehicles exemplified Big Big's ambition of bringing MotorStorm across to the PSP completely intact. Achieving this goal demanded a great deal of effort. Designed from the ground up for Sony's Portable and marketed for release alongside the PSP Go in October 2009, Arctic Edge was powered by a new engine that built upon the Pursuit Force games. Still, the PSP only supplied so much horsepower. It should come as no surprise, then, that recapturing the essence of a detailed console game using fewer polygons and much less processing power constituted the biggest production challenge. Yet Big Big didn't solely concern itself with recreating MotorStorm from a single-player perspective. Multiplayer garnered its fair share of attention, with the PSP iteration sporting ad hoc and infrastructure options for hosting up to 8 players at once. The studio turned vehicle customization into another top priority, providing hundreds of different accessories ranging from bumpers and spoilers to colors and logos. Such accoutrements meant players could establish a distinctive online identity, something few multiplayer featuring PSP titles were pushing at the time. The Arctic Edge creators endeavored to craft the best racing game on the PlayStation handheld. Its mixed, albeit largely favorable, review scores painted an interesting picture. On one hand, a contingent of critics and players believe the Pursuit Force developers succeeded at faithfully reimagining MotorStorm-branded chaos on mobile. Not everyone viewed this sentiment positively, since another subset of the audience believed Arctic Edge failed to escape the shortcomings of past installments, thanks in no small part to an unrefined solo campaign, troubled physics, unchallenging AI opponents, and mundane racetracks. The PS2 port from Virtuous didn't fare any better. But series creator Evolution had at least one more mainline PS3 adventure up its sleeve, and many hoped it would deliver, where Arctic Edge fell short.
When we were making MotorStorm 1, my boss at the time, Martin Kenwright, came into me one morning with this piece of paper. This, folks, is how most games start their lives.
Around 2008, not long after Big Big started Arctic Edge, Evolution Studios began toiling away on Apocalypse. Despite the property's ongoing success across 3 platforms, studio game director Matt Southern said the team had noticed a general decline in racing game sales for 7th-generation consoles. Extensive research into the matter suggested racing titles were unable to excite people enough or as much as something like an Uncharted 2. Attempts to fashion an experience that went beyond being a good racer thus guided the creation of Apocalypse in more ways than one. After shipping Pacific Rift, Evolution closely examined what the user base wanted from future releases. The game director recalled one fan-written post about the so-called MotorStorm paradox, wherein the player lamented that while individual races made MotorStorm feel like the best racing game ever, each installment's overall experience never managed to give them that coveted just one more go feeling. Developers focused on addressing this point of view, yet struggled with how best to apply actionable changes. Southern mentioned in a VG 24/7 interview that other genres could tackle such critiques by doubling down on story elements, an avenue racing fans wouldn't find unappealing. Nevertheless, the studio hired a pair of writers to help draft a light backstory, whose execution would remain non-intrusive but encourage players to progress the storytelling. The outcome of this experimentation borrowed heavily from the first Star Fox, whose difficulty levels were divided into 3 different routes, all boasting a unique collection of levels. In a similar vein, MotorStorm Apocalypse featured 3 main characters with distinct backstories tying into a trio of difficulty levels. So a rookie racing through the MotorStorm Festival's afternoon slot would see the aftermath of wanton destruction. And if that same player assumed the role of the middle character and raced during the morning, they'd witness the origins of said destruction. With respect to the broader storytelling, the key centered on not forcing players to invest too deeply. A GDC talk led by BioShock creator Ken Levine provided a guiding principle, courtesy of the game's take-it-or-leave-it approach. If BioShock players simply wanted to barrel through Rapture shooting everything in sight, they could. Those interested in the underwater city's history could explore more carefully, finding audio logs and the like. MotorStorm Apocalypse followed an analogous thread, offering up extra content for anyone curious about the festival's past. It marked uncharted territory for Evolution, and the carnage wrought in Apocalypse proved completely out of the ordinary for the kinds of racers the studio had become known for developing. In the past, MotorStorm Festival had taken over deserts, tropical islands, and snow-capped mountains, leaving many to wonder where the festivities would pop up next. According to Matt Southern, some fans expressed an interest in zipping around the moon. Evolution thought a city setting would serve the series well, but avoided going urban, believing a standard metropolis had no business mixing with MotorStorm's patented style of racing. The new game adopted brutal urban off-road racing as its premise, settling in a dilapidated cityscape inspired by California's San Francisco Bay Area. Such a scenery change naturally engendered the inclusion of new vehicle types, like muscle cars and supercars. And to ensure the DNA of MotorStorm remained deeply integrated, the developers incorporated environments beyond the norm. Apocalypse's tracks covered sewers, rooftops, and landscapes caught in the eye of hurricanes. Wrecking these locales was the next evolutionary step on the road to Apocalypse, whereby the team surmised that unadulterated destruction provided a brilliant catalyst for being able to race on nearly every level of a map. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place when Evolution decided exciting events should keep racers in a state of constant vigilance, giving rise to an unusual idea for the MotorStorm Festival that put the finishing touches on the brutal urban off-road racing motif. In universe, the location simply known as The City had been abandoned after an earth-shaking tremor caused catastrophic damage. MotorStorm racers learned of the deserted urban area and wasted no time organizing a sporting event. Mother Nature's ongoing attack on the city and the fact that not all inhabitants had left drove much of the action surrounding the racing-based festivities. Thus, every single-player race promised something unique. So when real-time destruction collapsed a building during one go-round, subsequent competitions on the same track depicted the building already in ruins, with additional routes having been carved out in the area by other in-game MotorStormers. Though the basic bones of the game bordered on post-apocalyptic, Evolution eschewed the terminology given that users would actually witness the apocalyptic mayhem for themselves. Southern called it survival racing, a theme the crew baked into the very fabric of the experience, particularly the overhauled recreation mode. Taking hints from the best online games of the day, the Apocalypse creators built recreation into a 16-player online and 4-player split-screen romp of high-octane action. A combination of the two even let users team up with 3 friends locally and 12 more online. Vehicle customization, rankings with associated rewards, and a game mode creator rounded out the multiplayer extras, which received added emphasis during Apocalypse's development as hardcore gamers were no longer the primary group playing online. As the 7th console generation marched on, Southern argued it became imperative to make multiplayer accessible, considering Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare had opened the floodgates to a wider audience by debuting perks, online progression, and rewards. There still existed room for a niche exhibition into the industry's ever-evolving technical capabilities, evidenced by the integration of 3D technology into Apocalypse. Bolstered by Sony's investment into bespoke 3D displays, the MotorStorm creator played a pivotal role in getting 3D gaming running smoothly on PS3 hardware after spending years testing the possibilities. Research into why racing games had hit a downturn further informed the 3D angle, the thinking being that it would usher in a paradigm shift by augmenting gameplay with deeper immersion. Of course, graphical improvements enhanced immersion in their own right. Because fans had long begged for nighttime tracks and vehicle headlights, the team at Evolution finally overcame their respective development struggles by reworking MotorStorm's lighting system. The overhaul permitted late-night races in spaces such as fairgrounds, where neon lights guided players through long, winding courses. Headlights were also cleverly put to use and occasionally blown out for added challenge. An adjusted field of view, better motion blur effects, and textures showcasing individual scratches on cars awaited Apocalypse players as well. Leaked details days before the title's official June 2010 unveiling proved superficial, merely hinting at sports car races across the American West Coast. The full breadth of Apocalypse promised much more and instantly fueled months of anticipation. However, a weeks-long delay spurred by the parallels between the project's implicit themes and the Tohoku earthquake that devastated northeastern Japan in March 2011 slowed momentum as Sony postponed its staggered global release that spring. The new MotorStorm's eventual arrival in May gave PlayStation audiences plenty to sink their teeth into, though it didn't hit the mark for everyone and faltered under the weight of unforeseen circumstances. Of the mainline installments, the 2011 iteration received the franchise's lowest aggregated review scores. Apocalypse soared in terms of pure spectacle, the disaster-torn landscape and constant destruction never failing to spark the sheer intensity its predecessors and some competitors lacked. But a reliance on environmental destruction also generated stumbling blocks. Getting stuck on debris regularly frustrated players. The same held true for the tiresome exercise of contending with a damaged vehicle. The rubber banding and flawed AI troubles of the past reared their heads again, too, while the single-player campaign, though inventive, left much to be desired. A contingent of reviewers and players felt differently, believing Apocalypse to be the property's high watermark. Unfortunately, such opinions had no bearing on the game's disappointing commercial performance. The cancellation of its Japanese release following the natural disaster in March compounded its sales-related misfortune. Matt Southern candidly told Eurogamer things looked so dour for the business that he feared Evolution Studios wouldn't survive Apocalypse's failings, a concern exacerbated by the unceremonious closures of fellow UK racing developers BlackRock and Bizarre Creations in 2011. At the very least, the Runcorn-based company had enough gas left in the tank for one more MotorStorm Fest. Internal doubts about Evolution's future temporarily eased thanks to Sony's continued support. Feelings Southern welcomed after 2011 kicked off what he deemed a tough year for the development house. Despite shipping a game all involved were really proud of, the studio game director lamented how poorly the final pieces fell into place due to heartbreaking reasons. Ultimately, he concluded the crew had little to complain about in the grand scheme, considering how badly other sectors of the racing game business had fared by comparison. Weak sales resulted in the shuttering of 2 fellow UK-based racing teams, while being a first-party PlayStation studio afforded Evolution the opportunity to separate its workforce into 3 groups. One squad supported Apocalypse post-launch with multiplayer updates and DLC. A second camp brainstormed fresh ideas. And a third team led by game director Paul Restchinsky had received the green light to develop MotorStorm RC, the downloadable arcade game designed for PS3 and Sony's PS Vita handheld. For the better part of 2011, Reszczynski helmed a small outfit assembled for the sole purpose of building a simulation of high-speed radio-controlled car racing for PlayStation's then-fledgling digital library. MotorStorm RC blended classic gameplay with modern connectivity features that helped it appear a cut above the average downloadable game of the day. The project's late 2011 announcement assured fans that the game would offer nothing less than a content-complete MotorStorm racer. 16 tracks spread across the franchise's 4 iconic locales guaranteed RC looked like its namesake, and 8 familiar vehicle classes ensured the bite-sized experience played the same. Hundreds of customization options, 64 festival events, 4 game modes, and leaderboards strengthen the offerings, as did pledges about the shared functionality between the PS3 and Vita versions. Sony's tailored approach to Vita game pricing put MotorStorm RC in an excellent market position as a launch title. For the shockingly low prices of $4.99 US on Vita and $9.99 US on PS3, PSN users could buy either digital download and get the other copy at no extra cost. This pay-once, get-both model paid dividends for Evolution's ambition of appealing to everyone, which cross-play save transfers further supplemented. The Vita may have sold below expectations, but all signs pointed to MotorStorm RC selling appreciably. And like the games preceding it, post-release DLC saw the radio-controlled racer enjoy a long tail after its initial pop. But to the chagrin of fans, MotorStorm's story screeched to a halt after RC. For the 9th console generation, the veteran racing studio drifted from a long off-roading excursion and headed straight towards Drive Club, its ambitious, socially driven PS4 exclusive. Drive Club's troubled development and disastrous launch ultimately resulted in Sony shuttering Evolution, with many of its number becoming founding members of Codemasters EVO. Eager to show the world that MotorStorm and the studio responsible for it were gone in nothing but name, Codemasters EVO would release Onrush in June 2018. Touted as much more than a spiritual successor to MotorStorm, Onrush sought to revive the adrenaline-pumping off-road racing experience that fans had sorely missed, while at the same time attempting something new. Paul Reszczynski headed the project, and even though it introduced new mechanics and a focus on team-based gameplay through a system dubbed the Stampede, the core essence of chaotic, mixed vehicle class racing remained intact. Onrush received fairly positive reviews for its attempts to innovate the tried-and-true MotorStorm formula in new and interesting ways, but struggled commercially and did not secure a strong foothold in the racing game market. Following its release, a large portion of Codemasters EVO staff was laid off, briefly relegating the studio to a supporting role before headlining development on Dirt 5 as Codemasters Cheshire. The subsequent acquisition of Codemasters by EA in late 2020 saw the Cheshire office merge with Criterion Games and put to work on the Need for Speed franchise. Onrush was delisted in September 2022 and its online server shut down mere months thereafter, effectively ending the last remaining connection to MotorStorm's legacy. Spiritual successors and fan-led endeavors aside, MotorStorm has laid dormant for well over a decade, leaving Gran Turismo to serve as Sony's only surviving racing property. Since the genre continuously fluctuates in and out of popularity, there's no telling if the hardware manufacturer will ever make room for a 6th MotorStorm installment. The series may go down as yet another PlayStation classic that seems to forever coast in a state of limbo. Thank you for watching our video. We'd like to take this time to thank, by name, the generous Patreons who have pledged to our Hall of Fame reward tier. Disco Cobra 2013, Ice Cold Water $1, Karu, Sauerkraut, Shuan Chinwin, and those currently subscribed to our producer reward tier: Adam Miller, Brock Piviroto, Darirap Sigurdsson, DCX NG, DJ Redden, Eric Bedio, Fallen Asterisk, It's Peanut Butter, Jake, Jan Christofferson, Matthew McLaughlin, Roberto Nieves, Sir Alex, C. Rob Kaysen, Taylor Moten, Your B, If you enjoy our content, please consider subscribing to our channel and backing us on Patreon.